In today's video, we'll be talking about upper motor neurons. Upper motor neurons originate in the cerebral cortex or the brainstem and synapse or connect onto lower motor neurons in the brainstem and spinal cord, which ultimately go on to send signals to tell muscles to contract or relax. Now, there are a bunch of these different pathways that these upper motor neurons take to synapse onto lower motor neurons, but a majority of these you don't really need to know for the MCAT, but I've listed them here for your reference. Now, the main one we need to focus on for the MCAT is the corticospinal tract, which has the upper motor neurons in the motor cortex connecting onto lower motor neurons in the spinal cord, which ultimately controls voluntary movements of our limbs and trunk. Now, looking at a more detailed view of the corticospinal tract, we can see that the soma or cell bodies of these upper motor neurons are originating in the motor cortex, and then they're traveling down to the medulla, which again is part of the brainstem. And about 90% of these fibers are going to cross over or desiccate, in this case from the left to the right half. And this is going to form the lateral corticospinal tract. And as you can see in the spinal cord, it's actually on the lateral side of the spinal cord. And now this tract is primarily controlling voluntary movements of our limbs. And then the remaining 10% of fibers are not going to cross over and instead form the anterior corticospinal tract on the same side. And this portion of it is primarily involved in controlling voluntary movements of the neck, shoulder, and trunk. Now, there are some signs of upper motor neuron damage to be familiar with for the MCAT. There's 4 main signs we look for. The first one is hyperreflexia, which is increased overactive or an over-exaggerated reflex. So thinking back to last video when we looked at the knee-jerk reflex, if the leg kicked out excessively or really hard, that would be a sign of hyperreflexia and upper motor neuron damage. Now the second one is clonus, which is involuntary rhythmic muscle contractions and relaxations that can be triggered by stretching a muscle. So in this little video, we can see a person push up on the foot, and now the patient's leg is contracting back and forth involuntarily. So this is an example of clonus and a sign of upper motor neuron damage. Now the third thing is hypertonia, which is abnormally increased muscle tone, like your muscles are really contract and tense. The fourth one is the extensor plantar response, also called the Babinski sign. So normally if we look on this diagram on the right, as we scrape a hard object from the heel to the toes on the bottom of your foot, normally your toe should curl down or flex. But in the Babinski sign, when you do that same motion, the toes go upwards or extend up. Now, please let me know what topics you would like me to cover next in the comments, and thank you all for listening.